Hey everybody, I'm Robert and I'd like to welcome you out here to Apex. As you can see today we've taken a slightly different sitting arrangement and I've got a different car behind me. I don't have the normal Pista or GT2 or M4 race car. I've got Misha's Mark IV Golf TDI, which he has I think nicknamed the Ring Tractor. Pretty cool little car. And it's going to bring me into the subject that I want to talk about today, and that is preparing your track tool, or I would even say daily driver, to also double as a track tool. We've got something really loud and exciting about to go by right now. This is pretty neat. Hopefully Tom can see this. Did you get that, Tom? Thing's pretty money, isn't it? So we thought it would actually be fun to sit out here and you can see how much activity there is. The racetrack's closed. VLN, which is the Nürburgring Endurance Racing Series, is actually going on right now. And at the current moment, 8 laps in, Moritz Kranz in his Cup 3 Porsche Cup car is actually leading the entire race in P1 somehow. His car is about 20 seconds off the pace of the front runners, which are in different classes, the GT3 cars, but 8 laps in, he's number 1, so way to go, Moritz. I think that lead will quickly be eaten up by the fast pace of the GT3 cars, but it's still cool to see on the leaderboard, so very cool, Moritz. But anyhow, what I want to talk about is your daily driver or a car that you have that you might want to turn into a track tool. And why, first of all, why would you do that? And what are the minimum things that you need to upgrade in order to make sure that you're safe out there? Point one would be, why would you want to do that? If you guys have been on Misha's channel recently, and we'll actually put a link to it below, Misha and I took this car for a lap. It has 132 or 140 horsepower, somewhere right in there. And it's not a car that's amazingly fast. It's not in a car that it's even on its stock suspension, so it's not a car that's perfectly flat in the turns and you're throwing it around. But it was an absolute blast to drive. It's one of the most fun things that you can do, is to go out and take a slow car and actually drive it very, very fast on any racetrack, let alone the Nürburgring. So that would be the reason that you would do it. We could take the cars out and we'll go out maybe this evening for just 1 or 2 laps in the cars, literally have a good laugh, get in some good, I would say some good fights and some good battles with some cars that are also a similar pace, and maybe even cars that are of a caliber maybe 3 or 4 steps above what we're driving, and it makes it a really engaging and exciting experience. So with that being said, what would you need to do if you have such a car? If you've got a car like this TDI Mark IV Golf and you're thinking, okay, I'm going to take this thing out on the Nürburgring and I'm going to go have some fun with it, what are the first steps that you need to take to, one, make sure that you can have fun, and most importantly, make sure that you're safe while doing it? A couple things that you need to go through are obviously the tires, the braking systems. We need to look at the cooling system, and really I would say one of the most important things is all of your coolant hoses basically coming off from your radiator into the water pump and the returns and everything like that, because that's probably one of your biggest dangers. One of the biggest dangers on the Nürburgring, other than driver error, is coolant spills or oil spills. So you need to make sure obviously you've done a good oil change and that the motor's in good working order. If you have a car that's leaking oil, never take it on the track. If you have a car that's leaking coolant, you should never take it on the track. But when I'm looking at an engine, every engine has its different scenario, but for the most part, the first thing you need to do is go look for old and brittle coolant hoses and connections from the water pump to the coolant hose and from the radiator to the coolant hose. I would say that's where you need to start. On any older car, the first thing I would probably do is just replace them, even if they look decent. If they're original, just get rid of them and put new coolant hoses in. That's a high priority. The issue with coolant is that it's not just water. If water spills on the track on a hot day, it will evaporate and it may not cause a problem for anybody. But with coolant, you actually have a very, I would say, slick material, and when it gets on the track, it's actually quite slippery for a good 20 minutes, maybe even an hour, depending on the volume of it. And it's when a hot tire comes onto this coolant, there is no way to keep control of a car. The number one thing that you need to do is to make sure that your cooling system is up to speed, and most importantly, that the radiator hose, returns, and supply lines are all in order. Number two is also going to be about hoses. I always steel braided brake lines, and I like to see that upgraded. Some people say, oh, well, you know, a true rubber brake line is also steel reinforced or nylon reinforced or with different types of material, but it has been tested and shown that a proper stated steel braided brake line will actually have the least flex, the most minimal flex of any type of brake line that you can have right now. So I always recommend going to a steel braided line. The reason for that is as you're pushing on the brake, you're essentially pumping fluid through a series of lines, and as that fluid pumps into the lines, it goes into the brake caliper. Once it gets into the brake caliper, it pushes out a piston. That piston then pushes out a brake pad, and that brake pad sandwiches between the brake disc in between the brake pads. Well, if you've got a brake line that's, let's say, old, maybe the brake line's 15 years old, 20 years old, and it's deteriorated and it's having flex, when I start pushing fluid into that brake line, that brake hose is going to flex. The pressure that should be applying towards your brake pads against the brake caliper is actually now expanding and contracting inside of your steel or your rubber braided rubber brake lines, and it's causing the energy that should be stopping your car to actually be exerted within your brake line. Now, if you're just on the road and you're coming to a stop, you're probably not going to notice it, but when you're on the track and your brake fluids are getting hot and your brake lines are getting hot, that expansion could get worse, and what's ultimately going to happen is you're going to have worse brake pedal feel, and you're going to feel a mushy pedal because you're pushing down and your brake lines are expanding and your fluid is pushing against the brake lines instead of the brake caliper. That is where you start to get a mushy brake pedal. The next thing you need to do is you need to go to a upgraded brake fluid. So you need to bleed out your brake system, and we're not just talking just get a little bit of lines out from the brake line into the caliper. You need to pump the fluid all the way through the master cylinder all the way out so that you end up with complete fresh new fluid that's rated for high temperatures and track use. That's a very, very important aspect that you need to do. So number one, cooling. Make sure your hoses are good. Number two, brake lines. Number three is brake pads. Make sure that you have a brake pad that is also sufficient. You need to look at your compound. You need to make sure that it's not a brake pad that's going to overheat. Make sure it's not a brake pad that's going to wear out after 2 or 3 laps. Overheating brake pad is also something that can lead to a mushy pedal feel because it will overheat the brake fluid as well. We've got another little race car here going by today. So that is actually the advertising service truck for one of our friends here in Nürburgring. They run a cool little 3 Series BMW, and that's one of their little runabouts, I guess, for the race team. So as I said, they're all running today, so neat to see everything running around. Anyhow, brake pads. Get the proper brake pad on your car, because that is what's always obviously going to stop you when you're coming into corners like Versiphon. Versiphon is one of the most popular turns that people say, man, my brakes were smoked by Versiphon. Yeah, you probably didn't do braided lines, you probably didn't upgrade your brake fluid, and you're probably sitting on your original brake pads. So this is something that you really want to be cautious of. So what do I like about brake pads? I personally like a harder brake compound. You need to look and make sure that your brake compound actually works in the car. That's where internet on the research on the internet is going to help you out. See what other people with your type of car is running and see what's working for them. Different cars will accept different types of brake pads. I can't tell you that what works for this Golf is going to work for the M3, or it's going to work for even the Polo GTI with electric differential with the e-diff. Each car has something different, something you need to understand about proper braking, and I'm going to go into detail in this in another video. But when you have a brake disc and you have a brake pad, the brake pad actually scrubs off and leaves a coating of material on the brake disc, and that aids in your material transfer, so that when the brake disc gets hot, the material on the brake disc gets hot, which is brake pad material, and those two create an even better friction. So we need to make sure that your disc and your pad and the type of car that you're driving work together with it. Don't just take your front wheel drive Golf and get the same brake pads that your buddy with the rear wheel drive Supra has. It's probably not going to be the same. Your brake load and your brake biases in those two cars is going to be completely different. You're going to need a different compound, so it's going to take some research. Finally, one of the other key things that I would say that you need to do is make sure that you have the correct tires. I can't tell you how many times here at Apex somebody's pulled into the car park and they're on winter tires, or they're on a very, very hard compound road tire that's maybe 15 years old that's going to slip and slide around. The proper compound tire for what you're doing is very, very important. One tire that I think is, in my opinion, The best tire for a mixed day driver and occasional track tire would be a Michelin Pilot Sport 4. I think that's a really good tire for mix. It's quiet, it's very good in the rain, and on the track you can have a lot of fun in it. In our Polo GTI we run only that tire, and we can run very, very quick on it. You can see in my channel some lap videos where they're blazing fast on a fantastic tire, but when it pours down rain you can really go crazy with them, and in daily driving they're one of the most comfortable tires you can get. We also run something like an NS2R. That's for somebody that's maybe doing more track driving than street driving, but a tire is very important. Like I said a moment ago, we've had people pull in on winter tires. I've had people pull in on tires with markings from 2005, literally 15-year-old tires that they're going out on the track on. These two things, a proper tire and a proper brake, are going to give you the best feel for your car and the best setup. Try to avoid coming to the track and on your first lap you are understeering through turns and think you need a better tire and you need suspension. The most common problem that somebody has when they go on track performance-wise is them. They don't know the track, they don't know how to drive performance-wise, they don't know exactly what they're doing, and that can be a big challenge. Pretty cool stuff going by here today, I think. This is actually something you guys would enjoy. We're actually going to build a terrace out here, and that's so that our customers can sit and enjoy and kind of car watch and see what actually goes by on the typical day. It really is neat, the wide variety of what all we see. But anyhow, most people's first trip to the Nürburgring, they experience understeer, they experience brake fade, and they think it's because their equipment isn't actually good enough. But the simple fact of the reality is it comes down to the driving. And that really is the best tip I can give you, is after you've made sure that your car is safe, make sure that it's safe, then it's time to go and get a coach and get instruction on the Nürburgring so that you know where does the track go, what is proper braking technique, how does using the entire track, entering the right-hander from far left, clipping the apex and then turning and using the entire track on the exit, how does that help your tire wear? How does that eliminate mid-corner understeer or even corner entry understeer? And how does that protect really all of your equipment and keep your temperatures down so that you can do more laps? An experienced driver can take a car that is maybe not cooling standard up to speed, maybe not braking standard completely up to endurance spec, and actually do a lot of laps out of it because they know how to take care of the car simply through track knowledge and more so driving knowledge. So I hope that gives you guys a little bit of insight into how to prep your car for the Nürburgring. Don't jump into suspension right away. Don't jump into big brake kits. See how your car works, learn the track, learn how to drive, and then improve the car as your skills are actually there. Make sure that you know what you're doing on the track before you build a car that's far beyond your needs. I think that's the best advice that I can give you. Hope that helps. You guys have been awesome. All of these videos are ideas that you guys have had. Actually, this came from a DM that I got on Instagram asking me how somebody could set up their track car for just occasional use. 10% use is I think what it was. Please plug down below your thoughts and ideas and questions. Maybe also tell me what you've done to your track car and if you felt that it was worth it or if you felt it was a little bit beyond what your driving characteristics needed. Anyways, you guys are awesome. Take it easy and we'll catch you later.